welcome back to part two of our conversation with Michael Robinson from C.A.T. In part one, we explored how C.A.T. crafted their Red Thread program from the ground up. And now, in part two, we're going to dig into their incredible results, which include reduced turnover, lower accident rates, and substantial cost savings. As Michael points out, you don't need to be a large carrier or have a really big budget to see these kinds of returns and rewards. By simply engaging and recognizing your drivers, and indeed all of your staff, you can unlock real, measurable benefits. Let's uncover the impact of what a thoughtful recognition program can deliver. Thanks very much for joining. Let's pick up where we left off.
I've seen this happen with many people's careers, and you're no different, right? We all started off as a driver trainer, or driver trainee, I should say, a driver trainee at one time. You know, it was like, hey, I think I want to drive truck and I need to go through a learning process. You know, I went through it with my uncles and my grandfather. I didn't go to a formal school, but I did get the opportunity to get that hands-on experience. And it was kind of interesting because probably later on, after I became a driver, you know, I was recognized for what good I was doing within the organization. As you know, no crashes, no violations, had a good attitude, paperwork was in and on time, you know, great conversations with my dispatcher and whatnot. And people saw that and recognized that and said, wow, we like what you're doing. Would you be interested in training others in that same fashion? You know, so that is a big form of recognition. And then it goes up the ladder from there because
yeah, I think you make a ton of good points with that, coming into an industry that you may not know, or you kind of grandfathered in. It's because your parents and your grandfather did it, but still, then it's really easy to mess up. As driving a truck, you know, it's whether, even if you did get, you know, the correct training, it can still be easy to get that ticket and really end up being on the bottom of a pile. And I think it's important to even when that happens, to educate the driver on just to do better. If you indeed, you know, you don't have any incidents and you do drive a truck, it ends up being quite easy, in my opinion, to go from that trainee to a junior level driver trainer in a few years. You can get there. You learn, you listen, you put things out there, and you come up with ideas. And I find, you know, with the younger generation, the ideas that are coming through, I wouldn't have even thought about them at any point in my life. And there's some great things that are coming from our younger drivers today.
How do your driver scorecards relate to those recognition programs? You know, is this something that all carriers can relate with in today's telematics, or is this something unique just to you guys?
No, I think everyone can relate to it to one degree or another. And as nice as it is to have cameras in the trucks like we do in all of ours, there are still telematics that an ELD provider will give you, depending on kind of your AG equipment and what you have on there. But I think there's lots of different plugins. For example, speed gauge as one, you know, monitoring that actually kind of creates a very good scorecard by itself. It's bolstered with an Isaac coach in the scenario use. It's bolstered with, you know, how many miles you're driving a month. And I think that's another one that's not necessarily a safety recognition, but having your drivers go out for, you know, a certain period of time and driving 10,000 miles in a month, or, you know, even 12,000 miles in a month is high mileage. But drivers will do it, and recognizing drivers that will do that, safe miles, right? And of course, I'm always talking about safe miles. But I think there's recognition there with the telematics, going back to that. And I think it's super important. And I think a team, even a small safety team, can get quite buried in telematics very quickly. And I'll say it, that the data, you're better off not having it than having it and not reading it. So you need to really roll programs out and work with your drivers on those programs. Have your drivers come in and let them understand what you're reading on telematics, and having them maybe even help you build a recognition program around that. And you know, we did that with our drivers. Like, what would you like to see? How do you think that we should do this? And when you tell a driver or explain to a driver what these can evolve into, you know, hard brakes or over accelerating, over speeding, how bad they can get and how much that can cost a company, they really quickly want to build a program where they want to be safe as well. So I think there's information that a lot of companies have out there that they can really pull apart and build recognition and bring your drivers in, because I can assure you your drivers just know more. Yeah, of course, we want to sit in our seats and behind our desks and read this data, and very smart people doing that. And the drivers do live it every day and can kind of explain why maybe some things happen and how to better those things.
Right.
And I just want to highlight one thing is you stayed at C.A.T. because of exactly the type of philosophy you're talking about. Is that right?
It absolutely is.
And again, you were a driver that came out of a learning school and went to a finishing school, and you reached fairly significant level of management in I mean, you're a young guy. Look at him; he's way younger than us.
He's nowhere near as white as we are.
So you know, I think that speaks volumes in two ways. One is what happens when you work with a quality organization that has recognition, that promotes, and again, one of the key topics that we talked to with Jane was the fundamental. Every carrier who has succeeded this, one of their fundamental elements is they engage with their drivers. And they don't just engage, but they get feedback and they listen and they incorporate what the drivers are feeding you. So, you know, for some of our listeners, if you're a smaller mid-sized carrier and you're not currently taking advantage of the opportunity to connect with your drivers, you're going to struggle to deliver the type of retention that Michael said. Well, you said you reduced turnover by 58%.
Yes, that's correct.
Just out of curiosity, I'm sure you don't know, but what's your average cost to hire a driver?
It's around $8,000 from start to finish.
So
without
58%,
program.
58% would represent how many drivers?
Oh my goodness,
Roughly.
that's going to represent in a year at least 90 drivers.
So 90 times 8,000.
$720,000.
Yeah,
yeah,
$720,000
in a year.
Right?
Yeah.
So you know, gee, do you think it costs you that much to implement this program?
Absolutely not.
So that's called ROI.
Absolutely. And this program, because one of the key factors of this was we already know what we can do that won't cost us a ton of money. And the numbers I gave you there is without a finishing program. When you kind of look at, and we really dove into the cost of a driver, including having to replace a driver, and that first 90 days of that driver only driving 300 miles a day or 250 miles a day, you know, learning how to keep that left door shut every time they go past the Flying J, as an example, right? So all of that added in, it gets very expensive very quickly.
Sure.
Then you put a finishing program on top of that, you know, which can last up to 12 weeks, where you pay your driver, you pay your driver trainer, and everything else. It's the numbers can get up there very quickly. So it's really worth investing in your drivers for sure.
Well, I was going to say, because I think too many people don't invest enough, and then they see the outcome, crashes, violations, everything else that's costing them out of pocket, where even a fraction of that money could have been spent as part of that finishing training and funded that program.
Yep, agreed. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
So that actually begs the question. I got to go there because John asked, did you happen to track what happened to your accident rate per million miles as a result of this program?
Yeah, of course. Obviously, that's very much in my wheelhouse.
Well, thought you might have for some reason. Don't ask me why.
We're not just winging it over here, right? Like, we're tracking these things. Yes, and we did. And it's funny, we'd because of when we'd done this project, my KPIs went out to my safety leaders at a very close time after launching this, and some of our more significant accidents went were cut almost in half as well. And it goes down to, again, I think being treated well on the road. Obviously, there's a huge training side of that. There is, and I'm going to plug Carrier's Edge, of course, because of Jane, that we use. So there's a lot of that. But when a driver's happier for the company they work with, and there's a culture there, they will just be better with their equipment. They will just treat the roads better when they're driving.
So again, I'm going to ask. I'm not going to ask for the actual hard numbers, but from a percentage improvement, did you happen to track that? Because any carrier can relate to a percentage improvement.
Yeah, of course. And I would say,
of course, like he tracks all this. He's my kind of guy. He's got KPIs on the wall.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Just plug into my Power BI here. So when I just kind of think of my accidents per million miles, tracking every accident, whether that's a small accident, anything preventable, so back in accident, fixed objects, I would say we probably dropped that by about 30%, and we're probably sitting at around a 3.2% accidents per million mile, 3.2 accidents per million mile, when that's all accidents, not just DOT recordable. So I think that's it's good. It's significant for us to kind of drop that, and like I couldn't explain how proud I am of the safety. It isn't me, I can assure you. It's a very hard-working safety team there that drive those numbers down.
But a 30% cost in deductibles, repairs, downtime, all of the hidden costs. Again,
it's a lot of money.
It doesn't matter what size carrier you are. A 30% reduction in that cost is 30% you're putting to your bottom line.
Well, and then I was going to say, and then add to that a 58% reduction in your turnover, which has got a cost factor per driver for everyone you hire.
Go back on the 30%, and that 30% is our overall accidents per million miles. The cost isn't quite as high as 30% of what we saved, but certainly our accidents per million miles will reduce by 30%. But if you measure that downtime, and I think that was important that you kind of clung on to that downtime piece, you measured, and that downtime not happening because of the accidents per million miles being reduced. I think there's numbers there that would be crazy high on how much you would save.
Awesome. Michael, this has been great. Thank you very much for sharing, and we really truly appreciate it. And I think we'd like to have him back to talk about some other stuff, because
absolutely. Like we're kindred spirits in the KPIs and the tracking. I can tell, like, and I'm doing this with all the clients I'm trying to work with. If you're not looking at it, you have no idea. And it never fails. The first time that I'm working with a client, I bring in some charts and some KPIs and some objective numbers, and we start showing it, the eyes just go like this. And I mean, to hear it from someone at your level who's working it a day in, day out, and it sounds like every initiative that you've introduced there has more than paid for itself and given returns to the organization by the improvements that you've delivered.
I think so. I think that's a fair statement. And not everything works, but the ones that have worked have been great. And at the end of the day, it's for our drivers, it's for our employees, just that they're happy to come to work and do what we ask them to do every day.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Well, thanks so much.
And we know that everybody's running an electronic logging device nowadays, and most of those logging devices have some simplistic KPIs in it, whether it be harsh brake, harsh speed, and whatnot. There's the simplest start for your recognition program right there.
And it costs you nothing. Just to say thanks.
The data's already there. Just pull it in and put it in they've been very intuitive these days, where we are actually pushing these into a Power BI from the Microsoft suite, and at a touch of a button you can see everything that's happening at any one time that you want to measure. You can pick what you want to measure. There's even, like you say, the most simple methods of doing this, with that harsh brake, with that overspeeding, just talking with your drivers, it will it'll make things better, and you learn a lot by doing that. Wait, I thought all my trucks were governed at 105. That can't be the case because I've just seen this. So you learn a lot as you go through.
Yep. So true. Awesome, Michael. Thank you again. And
this has been great. Thank you.
It has been.
And we will get you back.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate being here. I really do. So thank you for having me.
Compliance Clips is a joint production of Summit Risk Solutions and Links Consulting. Thanks so much for being with us today. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you in our next release. Take care.